All of my life, I have grown up amongst a family of teachers and coaches. Ever since I can remember, I lived in and around a school setting in a small Wyoming town. Talk of school activities and occurrences did not only take place while at school, but during evening family dinners and on weekends as well. I remember being brought along to many school sporting events before I entered school myself. I am part of a family of teachers and coaches. It is what I grew up knowing, loving, and disliking at times. During this time, I knew of nothing different than being part of a small town community amongst a family of very educationally and athletically involved individuals. My dad was always very compassionate and involved with his students and players. The things he did for my small town school were above and beyond what was expected of him. He really reached out to kids and gave them every opportunity to feel like they matter and always know he cared. As a young child, I remember attending many practices with my dad where I would sit and watch his mannerisms and techniques at work. Ask any student or teacher who knew him, and they would probably say that he strived to be a model for all young individuals he worked with. He was a man who had health issues for most of his adult life, and in this way he became even more inspirational to me as I saw him work through his challenges always in a positive manner. Although it may sound cliche for me to say, my dad was my hero, it is nothing more than true. I witnessed his strengths and willingness to help others, even when he was in his own physically weakest moments. I view my experiences as priceless, or those that cannot be taught through books, as I lived them. I grew up with parents and grandparents who were teachers within this small community. The behaviors they modeled at school, I had the privilege to be exposed to at home as well. As I became old enough to enter elementary school, these family influences seemed to really fuel who I strived to be. As modeled by my family of teachers, I became very involved in many things academically, athletically, and artistically. When I went away to the University of Wyoming in 2000 on a full-ride scholarship as co-valedictorian of my class, I had already achieved a lot that I was very content with. However, when I left high school, I had been a part of so many things that I could not narrow it down to the one thing I wanted to spend the rest of my life doing. I tried out engineering for a few years, then changed to psychology. During this time, I continued being a student while also staying home with our first child. As many people know, choosing to start a family in the middle of an education is anything but easy. Somewhere I had begun to question whether my life had gotten off track. Then I realized that my family of teachers had taught me that the biggest lessons are not those within a school, but those in which we are living. I had chosen to try out a different path and learn what else was out there. 2 summers ago, we found out that my dad had cancer again and would have to have a bone marrow transplant. During this time, the true value teachers have within their communities was revealed to me. I chose to go back to school to become an elementary teacher. While my dad was in the hospital for over 9 months after his bone marrow transplant, I realized just how amazing having an impact on so many lives as a teacher really is. People really cared about him a lot and reached out to him, telling him stories of how he had made a difference in their lives. I realized that this was what teaching is all about, and it drove me back to where my story began. Giving one's own time to another is priceless, as it was the best gift anyone could give to him during this time. Last November, my dad passed away after a long battle with cancer. Even after spending over 9 months in the same hospital, I watched as he still had his competitive, fun-loving spirit on many days. During the time he spent in the hospital fighting and after he was gone, I realized how many lives he had touched through the amazing support, cards, and letters we received from so many individuals that knew him both as a teacher and a member of the community. For myself, this was the biggest lesson of all. My dad, who could no longer carry on this legacy, was incredibly proud in knowing that his own kids had chosen a similar path. In this way and in so many others, I hope to be able to make a difference in the lives of more than just my own children. The values I hope to emulate that resemble those of my dad include cooperation, competitiveness, work ethic, the idea of balancing work and play, confidence and humility, giving one's time to others, and the initiative to never quit. I realize that these skills, which cannot be emulated from reading a book, are those which made the teachers I grew up around successful. I discovered last year after spending time away from all that I grew up with that I need this type of environment back in my life. not only for myself, but for my own children to grow up around as well. In my experience, having parents who are teachers provides an ideal model for kids to grow up emulating. Teaching for me is how this legacy within my family lives on, in attempts to pass on qualities learned from generations of teachers. In this way, it is also as it should be, with my dad and his wonderful values, always remembered, never forgotten.